Thanks, Amy. All right, now I'm going to introduce our speaker for tonight. It's Ms. Belinda McRae. She was elected to the State Board of Education in 2020, and she's a retired teacher from Marion County. She worked for 25 years there and for another 10 at Bevel State. So also, we will have a time for questions at the end, so if you'll just hold on to those, we will get to you. So, Ms. Belinda.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I do represent District 7 on the Alabama State Board of Ed. And I brought a map and I'll pass it around. I have a huge district. It goes up to the Tennessee line, down the Mississippi line to Lamar County, northern Tuscaloosa, northern Jefferson, goes up and takes in Morgan County and back up to Lauderdale. So I have a huge chunk of Northwest Alabama in my district, and I'm honored to serve. Thank you. If you voted for me, I ran unopposed, so I'm sure you did. And I appreciate that. I want to tell you just a little bit about what we do. Mainly, we make policy. And policy, that means just rules that apply to K-12 schools. And these resolutions, we do those monthly. We meet usually the second Thursday of the month at the Gordon Persons Building in downtown Montgomery. There are 8 of us, and we're elected. The governor is the president of this board. We do a lot of things, but I'll just share a few things with you. The number one thing we do is we represent our voters. We speak up, we vote the way the people in our district want us to vote. And I hope you've watched how I voted, and I hope you're pleased with how I have voted. We oversee the updating of courses of study. Now, in every classroom in Alabama, every teacher has a book that's called the course of study for that subject. And those courses of study are updated regularly. And we have committees who work on those courses of study and write them, and that's how the teacher knows what concepts to present. And right now, science is up. And so we have a committee working on every science class that's been approved for Alabama curriculum. And it's a huge job, and it's done by volunteers. And teachers, administrators, citizens, people who volunteer their time. And it's a very important job, and we oversee that. They report to us. And so we check what's being taught in every subject in the schools of Alabama. We also work with colleges of education, and we work with them concerning their schools of education and the courses that they are offering. We also work with them on testing. We just recently, and I don't know if this is good or bad, we'll see, but we lowered the praxis test because so many students were failing the praxis. And the praxis is a subject matter test. If you go to college and you enroll in the School of Education and you want to teach, say, English, you will have to take a test, one of the praxis tests, and you'll have to pass it before you can become certified. So, you know we have a teacher shortage. I didn't really want to do this, but I felt like we had to because we started school short, 1,500 teachers short in Alabama. 1,500 positions unfilled in 2022. So we were desperate. It's not that we wanted to lower the standard, but it's that we wanted teachers in the classroom. If you've ever wanted to be a teacher, this is your time. If you have a degree in anything, you can take 4 courses and be put in the classroom. Of course, you have to be background checked and go through all of that procedure. But it's never been easier to get in the classroom on an emergency certificate. If you have relatives who have always wanted to teach but are not certified, call the State Department, Office of Certification, and we will get you in the classroom if that's where you'd like to be. We also hire the superintendent. Dr. Eric Mackey is our superintendent, and we hire and fire the superintendent. We recognize outstanding performance by administrators, students, teachers. We have a lot of that. If you've ever watched our meetings or been to any of our meetings, we try to recognize people who have done outstanding things in their field. Current topics, the Literacy Act. I'll bet you've heard of the Literacy Act. It passed in 2019. Okay. It's been, the retention portion was postponed because of COVID. And what that means, if you have kids or grandchildren who were in the 2nd grade last year and who will be in the 3rd grade coming up, they will take a test called the ACAP test. They've been taking that. That test has been given the last few years. If you've read the paper after our last board meeting, you know that last year's scores dropped, and that is not good because this coming year, those kids in the 3rd grade will have to make the cut score or be held back. And that's not from us. That was a law the legislature passed in 2019. I'm concerned about it because at our last meeting, which was last week, we were told that 20% of the students did not make the cut score this last year. Now, I'm concerned about that because we cannot hold back 20% of the students in 3rd grade. So I asked the lady that's in charge of that at the State Department, I said, what do you foresee in reality? How many kids do you think will be held back, or what percentage? And she said part of the Literacy Act allocated funding for reading coaches, for summer programs, and that money is being spent and has been spent since 2019 on trying to get kids ready. COVID hit us hard, and as you know, we didn't have school there for a year and then part of another year, so the kids are really struggling. That's why we think that the scores went down a little bit last year, and that's not what we wanted. But anyway, I was told that less than 10% of the students will be held back, and there will be other ways to be passed on. There's a portfolio, there's another test that may be given, and there are good cause exemptions, such as special needs students, AAA students, if you know what that is, but students with special needs, they'll be given special consideration. And so I don't know. Nobody knows until that test is given this coming year what's going to happen. If you get a letter that says that your grandchild or your child did not pass the reading portion of the ACAP, don't panic, because there are other routes to get passed on. So you'll work with your school system on that, but that's a topic that you're going to hear a lot about. The teacher shortage is real. Last year, 30% of the teachers in the classroom were teaching out of field. That's statewide. 8% of the teachers leave their jobs and don't come back. 8% a year. 1,700 teachers last year taught on an emergency certificate, and 1,500 positions went unfilled. There are 733,000 students in Alabama, 1,554 public schools, and 138 school districts. This is a really good school district, and I know y'all are very, very proud of your schools. Not every place is so lucky. I served on the Marion County Board of Ed for 16 years, and when I first got elected to District 7 on the state board, and I started seeing how things were done in other places, I was shocked. I was really surprised. I was shocked at how low some of the test scores are. And I felt really sad for those kids that go to they're called priority schools now. They used to be called failing schools, but now they're called priority schools. Not every child has the chance that your children and grandchildren have to go to a really good school and learn and go on to college or go on to trade school or go on to work with that strong background. And I strongly believe that every child should have that opportunity for a strong basic education. That's pretty much it. I told you I wouldn't talk long. It's an honor to be here, and I'll take some questions if you have any.
I do.
Yes. Are you a teacher by any chance?
I am.
You look like a
Yeah.
teacher.
I'm going to wait till my...
Thank you. Thank you for what
You're
you
welcome.
do.
You're welcome. I'm going to wait till he goes out of the room because there's just stuff that he's not able to hear.
Okay.
I don't want him to hear.
Your cute little boy.
Yes. All right, good evening. Thank you so much for coming. Please bear with me as I'm going to read some excerpts from a reading curriculum.
Yes.
In a second grade book, there lies a picture of a man standing with a bucket on his head, his
Oh,
pants around his ankles, and another man kneeling right in front of him. The passage next to the picture reads, "The first hunter was found wearing an empty molasses bucket, a silly grin on his face. Seems he tried the sweet approach and got licked in more ways than one." Very inappropriate for students to read and see. The next is also in a second grade mythology book that reads, "Zeus continued, 'Welcome among us, Dionysus, god of wine, pleasure, and theater.' Suddenly there appeared a handsome fellow with laughing eyes, a lazy smile, and dark curly hair. Dionysus spoke in a light, easy tone. 'I am honored, and I shall teach humans to make wine and raise cups of it in praise of us all, and they shall dedicate or offer up as ways to show respect or affection their finest place to the gods and goddesses. In these ways I hope to provide pleasure to humans and honor us all.'" Why are we discussing pleasure and wine with a handsome fellow? Also inappropriate.
With a little child.
Yes. In the first and second social studies books, they're teaching religion. They're teaching about Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, etc. These students also fill out graphic organizers of how many gods each religion has, their holy place, etc. Religion at this age is not appropriate to teach and therefore should be left to the upper age schools, not for the eyes of 6, 7, or 8-year-olds. In a second grade science book, they discuss the health system, which on the surface level seems okay until you get to the picture in the text. For example, feces or waste is stored in the rectum until it is ready to be passed out through the body through the anus. Really? Is this appropriate for the age level? I don't think so. And as you were talking about standards, that's nowhere in second grade standards, anything that has to deal with the health system. And lastly, this is found in the fourth grade text, and it reads, "Oh," said Thor in his best girlish voice, "it's so big. May I touch it? If it pleases you, fair one," said Thrym. "It pleases me," said Thor, still using his girlish voice. Then lifting the hammer above his head and bursting out of his wedding dress, he called out, "It pleases me greatly." It's quite embarrassing reading some of this text to you all, let alone having students read this. All these excerpts come from CKLA Amplify reading program, which is based out of New York. I emailed you, along with the state school board members, all of these pictures, and you even replied to my email, so I know you saw them. Why then did you vote in favor of it at the state and for the state to recommend this for our schools?
Okay, I'm familiar with every one of those. And I will tell you what happened there. Ooh. The Literacy Act said that you have to have the science of reading. Your books have to follow the science of reading. Okay, that was the only company in K-3 that submitted works that fit the requirements of the Literacy Act. Okay, in order for a school system to buy textbooks, they have to be state-approved textbooks, unless you've got a big local pot you can buy those books out of. Okay, I started getting phone calls when these books started arriving at central offices. And I went down to my local central office, and the curriculum coordinator and I took box cutters and we opened the sample books. And we spent the afternoon going through those sample books. And I've seen what you're talking about, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay, I took photos and made copies of those pages, and then I had a little bag that I carried around for a while, and I was shocked, like you were shocked. Okay, I refused to vote. That was the only choice that schools had that was approved by the Literacy Act and by the Literacy Task Force and by the State Textbook Committee in K-3. That was the only choice we had. Did you notice that we didn't vote when that was our only choice? And I'll tell you why. Oh, let me record it. Some of us refused to vote for those. Okay, so I don't think it had ever been done before in the history of Alabama education that there were enough members of the board who said, I refuse to approve this. Now, if we voted no, hopefully there would have been enough of us, we could have voted no. Had we voted no, there would have been zero choice, which is probably better than that choice. Many systems went ahead and ordered that because it was approved by the Literacy Task Force. It met the state standards according to the Literacy Task Force. It also met the textbook committee standards. They approved it. So we had 2 state entities who approved it, and we were the 3rd entity asked to approve it, and some of us said, no, we will not do it. Okay, so it just froze right there. And so it did not come up to us. Had we voted no, that company could not submit anything else to us for approval. If you're turned down by the state board. Now those materials that you're talking about are horrible, but not everything from that company is horrible. That is horrible. But we didn't, well, we never got a chance. It never came up to vote. It just kind of was frozen at that point. Okay, time went on, and this Literacy Act is still going, and kids are taking the ACAP, and they're not being able, the schools are not able to buy books. Okay, I took my little bag and I took it to one of our legislators. It's a legislator who really pushed for the Literacy Act. And I showed her those materials. And I said, do you know that this is what, that the task force approved these materials, and do you know that they did? And she just kind of brushed me off. And the others I went to that were on the task force just kind of brushed me off also. And they said, oh, you're making too big a deal. You're making too big a deal about this. Teachers have discretion whether they teach this stuff or don't teach this stuff. And I said, what about young teachers that are right out of college that just do what they're told? Where are they going to get that discretion? Okay, things rocked on, and kids didn't have books. We didn't have the books that taught them the science of reading so they could pass the ACAP. So the clock kept on ticking, and schools weren't able to order books. Finally, we had another company, and the reason the other company was not considered that first time is because they had let their copyright expire. So finally we had another company. Have you seen those books?
McRae.
Yes. Did y'all get those
Our
books?
school system voted on that, and they still bought the other.
Oh, they still bought the other? Okay, this was so frustrating for me. I started calling school systems and saying, don't order those books, don't order those books. We're working on another company. We're working on getting you another choice. But they were saying, those are the only books that the state will pay for because they're the only state-approved books. So lots of school systems ordered those very books. And even though I made calls and said to superintendents and curriculum directors, I generally got, it's too late. We don't have the local money to buy another company.
If we had to order those from that company, why could we not exclude the bad books? Why did we have to order those specific
You could locally, but here's the tricky thing. What I found was not all that stuff was in the little sample packs that were sent. Y'all are the first place I've been asked this, and I've been wanting to talk about
If not in
it.
the sample pack, we ought to be able to get our money back.
Well,
I don't have kids.
So like out of 8, so say we have 8 units. I have a skills portion which teaches the science of reading. I have like 6 of those. Then I have a knowledge portion, which a lot of this is where it's coming from. That I have 12 books to teach from. They may send you one skills book and one knowledge book to look at.
As a
So I'm seeing a snippet as an
Yeah.
example
So
at the
you
school
don't-
level.
you don't know what you're getting till you
When
order
you
it.
get unacceptable stuff, you ought to be able to get your money back.
Okay.
Doesn't work like that.
Yes. Finally, we got the McGraw-Hill to update their copyright. And then we were given what we voted on was to give schools more than one choice. So that's why I voted yes on that, because it gave schools another choice. And some schools still ordered that other one. And I do not know why. But I live that. Yes, and I'm telling you what, I spent my whole life in public education, 45 years. And I foresee in the future, near future, where you won't be able to send your children to public school. Because that stuff, some systems are loving that stuff. Some systems are in Alabama. And that's the direction that our books are headed, I believe. So, excellent question, and I hope I've answered it.
On the task force, who are they? How do they get there? I mean,
That was going to be my question. Where's the literacy task force funds coming from?
Okay, the
Or you mentioned numerous times the Literacy Act. And
Yes.
is that federal government funds?
Literacy Act was passed by the Alabama legislature in 2019. I have a dear friend who's on the literacy task force, and I asked her, because she's a very good person, and I said, why did y'all pick? I know the science of reading, you have to meet all these requirements, but why did y'all pick this particular book series? And she said, we never looked at any of the books. Because she said that wasn't our job. Our job was to make sure that the books lined up with the checklist that we had, and you know more about this than I do, that it covered phonics, it covered all these detailed things that had to be in the book. And she's a very nice person. I said, have you seen what's, and I had my little bag, my little canvas bag I carried around there and I show people. And she said no. And the task force that's a state task force.
Are they bureaucrats? Are they hired by the state?
No, they're, I believe the governor chooses so many people, and then the legislatures, I have to look that up, I have to verify that. But these are not bad people on the literacy task force. I know some of them. They just didn't know. It's like sending the sample books and not putting the bad book in there. They did that. They did not know. So you just gotta really watch. And I wouldn't have known had I not started getting, I got a phone call from the Marion County superintendent and curriculum director, and that's how I knew. Had I not gone down there and spent the evening going through the samples, I wouldn't have believed it. Or probably not. I needed to see it for myself. But that's a story on that.
You talk about teachers leaving, and you're possibly looking at one I don't want him exposed to.
I don't blame you.
But what do we do? Because I love teaching. But you put crap like that in our schools, and you're going to have a bunch of teachers and students leave, and we're not going to have good schools anymore.
Well, you've got sense enough not to teach that.
And I'm so thankful that my principal is like-minded and
Yes.
conservative. I'm able not to teach it.
Mhm.
But he'll follow me wherever I go because I can't send him. I can thankfully pick his
Right.
teachers right now, but after second grade,
Well, you
I
know,
don't trust it.
there were several bills, you guys that are running, there were several school choice bills up.
Mhm.
I don't think any of them passed, did they? Not even the Sun bill that concerns special needs students. So I think that is where we're headed. You either have choice, or you homeschool your kids, or you send them to a private school or church school. I mean, sadly, and I'm saying this sadly because I have been a public education advocate my entire life. Good questions. I'm glad to get to tell that story. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you have any comments or new business that needs to be addressed real quick? If not, would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second, you would?
Second.
Awesome.